The atmosphere inside the studio should have been ordinary, just another polished morning on live television, but something felt charged, almost dangerous, from the very start. This was supposed to be a routine appearance, a breezy 10-minute stop on a long press tour. Instead, it became the kind of spectacle that grips an audience and refuses to let go. Producers hustled through their checklists with the usual mechanical precision, headsets crackling as cameras were adjusted and lights tested. Crew members whispered final cues, their movements quick but practiced, like dancers repeating a routine they'd mastered years ago. The hosts gathered at the iconic round table, notes neatly stacked, smiles rehearsed. Everything screamed predictability until Tom Hardy walked in. From the instant he stepped onto the set, the air shifted. A storm seemed to follow him, silent but heavy. Makeup artists later confessed they felt it first. An unsettling tension beneath his casual stride. Hardy dodged small talk, offering curt replies that cut conversations short. His eyes, usually magnetic and playful, held a dark intensity that made even seasoned staff avert their gaze. The easy pre-show chatter never materialized. Instead, a thick quiet trailed him as he took his seat. It wasn't hostility you could name, it was the sense of a ticking clock, counting down to something no one could predict. Then came the red light, the signal that millions were now watching. Joy Behar leaned toward the camera, her trademark warmth wrapping every word. "Tom, welcome to The View. We're thrilled to have you here to talk about your new film." It was the simplest, safest opening imaginable. Hardy's response detonated like a flash grenade. "Are we really going to pretend this is about the film, Joy?" His voice sliced through the studio, low, sharp, and impossible to ignore. "Because I've seen your show. I know exactly what this is about." The table went still. The hosts exchanged quick, nervous glances. The audience, mid-applause, faltered into a stunned hush. Behar kept her smile, but her eyes narrowed slightly, the only sign she'd registered the blow. "Of course we want to hear about your project," she replied evenly. "Our viewers love learning about the person behind the performance." Hardy leaned forward, his stare unrelenting. "Engaging television? Is that what you call ambushing guests with personal questions? Digging into their private lives for ratings?" A collective gasp rolled across the audience like a wave. Cameras shifted to capture every flicker of expression as tension coiled tighter. Behar tried again, her voice calm but firm. "No personal questions have been asked, Tom. We're here to celebrate your work." "Don't play dumb with me," Hardy snapped, the words hitting like a hammer. "I know you've been digging into my family, my relationships. I won't sit here and let you use me for entertainment." The studio temperature seemed to spike. Crew members fidgeted at the edges of the set. Security glanced toward the stage, sensing the fragile balance of live television tipping toward chaos. Behar's brow furrowed, confusion mixing with rising irritation. "Tom, those topics aren't on our list. I don't know where you're getting this." Hardy's bitter laugh echoed across the room, cold and cutting. "Standard topics? Really? What's standard about asking me about rehab from 15 years ago? What's standard about bringing up sealed custody battles?" Gasps erupted again. Audience members leaned forward, eyes wide, as the tension escalated from awkward to combustible. Behar shook her head, looking toward the producers for silent confirmation. "Tom, those questions were never planned," she insisted, her voice sharpening. "That's simply not true." "Liar." The single word landed like a thunderclap. The crowd froze. A few whispered nervously, others clutched their phones, torn between recording the spectacle and simply watching it unfold. Behar's practiced composure cracked for the first time, a flicker of disbelief flashing across her face. Hardy pressed on, his tone relentless. He accused the hosts of smiling to guests' faces while secretly hunting for scandal. "You're parasites," he said, his voice low but carrying, "feeding on drama and calling it journalism." The set no longer felt like a talk show. It felt like a live battleground. Every camera, every eye in the room locked on the unfolding confrontation. Behar inhaled slowly, fighting to regain control. "Tom, let's take a step back and focus on your film, your character. What drew you to this role?" Hardy's reply was a growl. "Miscommunication? That's rich, Joy. Your career is built on miscommunication's little slip-ups that make guests look bad while your ratings climb." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Even longtime viewers of The View had never seen anything like this. Behar's voice hardened. "That's not fair, Tom. I've treated every guest with respect for decades. Whatever's upsetting you, this hostility is uncalled for." The spark ignited. Hardy shot to his feet, the scrape of his chair screeching across the floor. Audience members flinched at the sudden movement. "Uncalled for? How about inviting me here under false pretenses?" Pretending this is about my work while you dig for dirt? Using people's pain for a cheap television circus? Security shifted forward a step, ready but hesitant. Behar rose as well, her own patience reaching its limit. Sit down, Tom. You're making a scene over nothing. We invited you here in good faith. Good faith? Hardy thundered, voice booming so loud the mugs on the table rattled. There's nothing good about what you do here. You exploit vulnerabilities for profit. You are everything wrong with this industry. The words cracked like lightning. Audience members clutched their seats, caught between fascination and fear. Whoopi Goldberg finally broke her silence, her commanding voice cutting through the charged air. Tom, we need to cool this down. Whatever's upsetting you, this isn't the way to handle it. We're live. People are watching. Hardy pivoted toward her, with a glare that felt like a physical shove. Too far? You think I'm the problem? How about the way you all gang up on guests who don't fit your narrative? You call it conversation. I call it ambush. The audience gasped again, a sharp inhale of disbelief. Cameras zoomed tighter, hunting for every flicker of emotion. Whoopi kept her voice steady but firm. That's out of line. We bring on people from every background. You may not like hard questions, but don't twist this into some grand attack. Twist? Hardy slammed his palm on the table with a crack so loud it rattled the mugs and sent a ripple of shock through the room. Water splashed across the glossy surface. This isn't twisting, this is truth. You feed on misery and call it television. A nervous murmur spread through the crowd. Some viewers shifted uneasily, while others instinctively reached for their phones, torn between fear and the chance to capture viral history. Joy Behar's composure finally wavered. Her voice sharpened like a blade. You know what, Tom? I've interviewed thousands of people, and never has anyone behaved like this. If anyone's humiliating themselves, it's you. Hardy's laugh was cold and hollow, echoing across the set. Humiliating myself? At least I'm real. At least I'm not hiding behind fake sympathy while cashing checks off other people's pain. The studio lights felt hotter, harsher. Crew members exchanged frantic glances. Security edged closer, waiting for a signal. Sarah Haynes lifted a tentative hand, her tone cautious but pleading. Tom, maybe we can reset. Maybe. There's just a misunderstanding. Hardy spun toward her like a striking animal. Reset? There's no reset. This is who you all are, smiling faces, hiding sharp knives. The words sliced through the room, sending another shiver through the audience. Even seasoned producers, veterans of live TV drama, looked visibly shaken. Behar's patience finally snapped. She stood tall, voice trembling with fury. You want to talk about masks? You're the one unraveling on live television. You're the one showing instability, not us, Hardy sneered, his expression dark and unyielding. Ugly? At least my colors are honest. At least I don't pretend to care while manipulating people for views. Phones were raised higher now, little glowing rectangles capturing every second. The audience barely blinked, transfixed by a confrontation that felt like a live grenade. Behar's voice cracked as her anger rose. You accuse us of exploitation, but look at what you're doing. You're hijacking this show for your own public meltdown. Hardy leaned in until their faces were inches apart, his voice dropping to a dangerous hiss. Meltdown? No, Joy. This is exposure. This is what happens when someone finally calls you out for the fraud you are. Producers gestured frantically from the wings. Stage managers whispered into headsets. Security inched even closer, but none dared break the fragile barrier between spectacle and intervention. Hardy's eyes narrowed, his tone turning icy. This isn't your set, Joy. You think you run this place, but you're just a pawn. When the people upstairs watch this footage, it won't be my career in flames, it'll be yours. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Behar's face blanched, the first true flash of fear breaking through her anger. Are you threatening me? Hardy's lips curled into a chilling half-smile. Not a threat, a fact. Careers can end in an instant. Yours might be next. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, their mechanical whir barely audible beneath the pounding tension. Security stepped forward, but Hardy held his ground, voice dropping to an unnerving near whisper. You call this entertainment? Journalism? No, this is a circus and you're the ringmasters cracking the whip. Behar's reply came like a whip of her own. You're the one turning this into a circus. We gave you a platform to talk about your work, and you turned it into a tirade. You're wrecking your own reputation. Hardy straightened, his tone suddenly calm, far more unsettling than his earlier shouting. My reputation was built on chaos. People expect volatility from me, but your entire career is built on control. And right now, millions are watching you lose it. The audience reacted with a sharp collective inhale. Some whispered to neighbors. Others simply stared, wide-eyed, as the set seemed to shrink under the weight of Hardy's words. Whoopi Goldberg stepped in once more, her voice strong and commanding. "Tom, enough. This is live television, and you're crossing lines you can't take back." Hardy turned to her with a glare that froze the air. "Crossing lines? No, Whoopi, I'm erasing them. And when this footage hits the world, it won't just be about me. It'll expose all of you parasites, manipulators, frauds." The words hit like a volley of gunfire. A few audience members stood, unsure whether to stay or flee. Phones trembled in raised hands as the moment barreled toward chaos. Security advanced in unison, but Hardy planted his feet, voice booming one last defiant time. "You think you own this stage? You think you own the narrative? Not anymore. This isn't the end of my career. It's the beginning of yours unraveling." Behar, trembling with fury, shouted to the crew, "Get him out of here." Two guards closed in, gripping Hardy's arms. He twisted just enough to deliver a final, chilling parting shot. "This isn't over, Joy. When the world sees what you really are, don't be surprised when the empire you built comes crashing down." The studio fell into a suffocating silence. The hosts stood frozen. The audience sat stunned. And millions at home watched in disbelief as live television veered into uncharted territory. The aftermath felt surreal, like the studio itself was holding its breath. Security escorted Hardy toward the edge of the set, their movements cautious, as though one wrong step might ignite another explosion. The audience barely moved, their collective shock creating a silence so deep it seemed to swallow the hum of the cameras. Hardy didn't struggle, but every step carried the weight of defiance. His shoulders squared, his eyes locked on the host's table. He looked less like a man leaving, and more like a man daring anyone to stop him. The tension was so thick it felt almost physical, pressing down on every person in the room. Joy Behar stood rooted to the spot, her face pale, but her jaw tight. She kept her gaze fixed on Hardy, refusing to look away, even as he was led off set. For years she had thrived on sharp debate and unpredictable guests, but nothing in her long career had prepared her for this. The other hosts exchanged stunned glances, their carefully crafted professionalism beginning to crack. Sarah Haynes's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her cue cards, though everyone knew no cue card in the world could contain what had just happened. Whoopi Goldberg exhaled slowly, her voice low and measured, as she tried to salvage the broadcast. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need a moment." Her words sounded calm, but her eyes betrayed the storm brewing beneath the surface. Cameras captured everything, the stunned audience, the frantic crew, the hosts frozen between disbelief and duty. Viewers at home weren't just watching a live talk show anymore, they were witnessing a career-defining implosion, a train wreck of emotion that no one could look away from. Even as Hardy disappeared backstage, his words seemed to linger in the air like smoke. "This isn't over," he had said, and somehow everyone in that room believed him. Behind the cameras, producers scrambled to make split-second decisions. Should they cut to commercial? End the show early? Or keep rolling and capture every shocking second for a public already buzzing with speculation? Phones lit up across the studio as audience members texted friends and family in frantic disbelief. Social media was already erupting, hashtags forming, clips spreading before Hardy had even left the building. Behar finally broke the silence with a tight, deliberate voice. We'll be right back." It was the simplest of lines, but the tremor beneath it told the world everything. For the first time in her career, Joy Behar had been thrown completely off balance on live television. As the show cut to an emergency commercial break, whispers rippled through the studio audience. Some speculated Hardy had planned the outburst to send a message. Others wondered if something deeper was unraveling in real time. When the cameras returned, the hosts sat stiff and tense, their smiles forced, their eyes still flicking toward the wings as if Hardy might suddenly reappear. Behar cleared her throat and attempted to steer the program back to its intended topics, but the effort felt hollow. Everyone knew the real story had already been written. By the time the broadcast ended, the damage was done. Clips of Hardy's tirade were already racing across the internet, racking up millions of views within minutes. Comment sections overflowed with shock, disbelief, and wild theories about what had truly sparked the meltdown. Industry insiders would later describe the moment as a live grenade, a career risk so brazen it defied logic. Some claimed Hardy had destroyed his image. Others argued he had exposed the darker side of talk show culture, turning the spotlight back on the very hosts who tried to control the narrative. Outside the studio, reporters swarmed the building, desperate for statements. Security held them back, but not before a few shaky cell phone videos made it online, each one capturing Hardy's chilling final words. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Hours later, networks replayed the footage on a loop. Headlines screamed of "The View meltdown heard around the world." Experts debated whether Hardy had committed career suicide or orchestrated one of the most calculated publicity stunts in Hollywood history. But for those who had been in the room, the audience members who felt the raw electricity in the air, the crew who scrambled to maintain control, the hosts who watched their familiar set turn into a battlefield, one truth was undeniable. Something extraordinary had unfolded before their eyes, something that would be replayed, dissected, and argued over for years. By nightfall, social media was ablaze with questions. Was Hardy exposing hidden truths about the industry, or simply succumbing to his own inner chaos? Was this the start of a broader reckoning for daytime television, or just a bad day that spiraled beyond imagination? Only one thing was certain: live television would never feel quite as safe again. And now, the question shifts to you. What do you think pushed Tom Hardy over the edge? Was this an unplanned eruption, or a deliberate strike against the talk show machine? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss the next shocking story that keeps Hollywood and the world buzzing.